Hi, everybody. This is Kathleen with the Well of Creativity interviews for TreeSisters. And today I'm really happy to introduce you, but I'm sure you've already heard of Mary Reynolds Thompson, and the author and the exquisite soul and TreeSister, water carrier, and so much more. I'm going to read a little bit about her as you get to sit and just listen and learn from Mary in a few minutes. Mary was born in London, England, and now lives in Marin County, California. She's been a TreeSister since about 2016, and when she became a TreeSister, it coincided with the launch of her book, A Wild Soul Woman, and the Wild Soul Woman course, which is a training program that we'll talk about. Since then, the proceeds from her book and her course have gone to plant trees. So that's probably a very big forest by now. And Mary is a facilitator of poetry and journal therapy dedicated to bringing forth the wild soul story. This new story is rooted in our oneness with nature and a vision of the world in which the wild landscape of both earth and soul can thrive. As a little girl, Mary's wild soul awakened by family vacations spent in Positano on the Amalfi coastline in southern Italy. She slept in mountain caves and rode a pig called Romona over dusty trails. We got to hear about that. Many years later, she would hike the Himalayas, backpack the Grand Tetons, and brave the blasting winds of Patagonia, deepening her connection to sacred earth. Her first book, Embrace Your Wild, 52 Reflections for an Eco-Centric World, was a finalist for both Best Nature Book in 2011. Her latest book, Reclaiming the Wild Soul, How Earth's Landscape Restore Us to Wholeness, is being lauded by spiritual leaders and ecologists alike. Born in London, England, and living with her husband, Bruce, who often travels with you, right, Mary?
He does.
And we're just so happy to welcome you, Mary.
Oh,
how are you?
Dear Kathleen, it's so good to be here with you. Can I tell everybody that Kathleen and I really know each other now? I first met Kathleen in the physical form when she joined me a couple of years ago for a Wild Soul Woman retreat in Santa Cruz, California. And she actually did, as part of that, a stunning water ceremony for us. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. It was incredible.
It was so stunning. And actually, I love that you say that my book was A Wild Soul Woman, because I'm writing A Wild Soul Woman. This will be my third book. This will be my third book. So, but I love it because you've just made it real.
I just put it out there for you.
You've talked about it as though it's already written, which is fantastic. But no, so Reclaiming the Wild Soul is my latest book, but will not be my last book, because I am working on writing A Wild Soul Woman. But then I did a training to have other women become a Wild Soul Woman certified facilitators, and Kathleen is now such a being after what turned out to be a year-long training.
Yeah,
it was
wonderful.
Going to be 9 months, but it kind of went on a little longer, which was just fine. And so, we took that journey together, which was really powerful, intimate, at times deeply challenging for all of us. And we really got to know each other through the kind of the valleys and the mountaintops, and we plunged into some pretty fast-moving water, and we came out. So it was really kind of an amazing experience for me, and I think for all of us, I hope.
Absolutely. It was for me too, Mary. It was a journey, like you said, it was a whole entire year, and I haven't been the same since. And the journey just being connected to you on the journey, but also all of the other women who became facilitators. We're just a family now, and it's of wild soul women, and we have a new direction to share that with the world. It's really powerful, your writing and your whole, process around this. So I'd love to dig in and let more people know. What would you like to say about your writing? Like, when did you start writing, first of all?
I was a little girl, it's so funny. I have this, and it's actually wonderful because in my book there are illustrations by my oldest friend Sophie, who did the illustrations in the book. So if you imagine, Sophie and I are 6 years old, and we're out in the playground at the Convent of the Holy Child, Cavendish Square in London, where we go to school. And we are both seriously writing our books. So that's how old I was. And it was so fun. We stitched these pages together to make them look like real books. And Sophie, I still remember, wrote a book about a doll's house where all the people came alive. She went on to get married very young, start a family, and really create a life around the home. I wrote a book about being a young girl growing up with wolves in the woods. So our paths in life were seeded.
Wow.
And I remember the seriousness with which we took our artistic endeavors then. I mean, it was like we spent hours through a whole term while other people were playing, and we were just sitting there writing away.
That's incredible. Just beginning, setting your whole journey up, creating it, envisioning it. Oh,
yeah.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we were all led to do that?
And had the time. You see, this was the thing. It wasn't, in a way, we weren't led to do it. We wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But because our time wasn't scheduled and structured like young children's time is now,
Yeah.
we had hours of know-nothing time when I was a child, where you had to use your imagination.
Right.
Because there was nothing else. There was no TV. There was no scheduled this, scheduled that. It was like there was time. There was just time. And so during that period of time, how we filled it was through writing, our imaginations and our writing. Yeah. And as a child, I was always putting on plays. I don't know about you, Kathleen. I was always. Now we're going to be, and I'll be the princess, and you can be this, and but it was just constant because that's what we did.
That's what we did because we entertained ourselves. You're right. And that is getting lost a little bit, or a lot, possibly. I hate to say a lot because it hurts to say that. But our imaginations were just wild and free.
Yes.
And the creativity was endless and boundless. And it really still is. But we have to tap back in to that little child and just be free and wild and get into all the things that you talk about in your book. As far as TreeSisters, what was it that called you, Mary, to TreeSisters?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about TreeSisters. And then I have a book called Spiritual Ecology, and I was looking for people to blurb my book. This is what you do when you're a writer. You look around and think, who would say something nice about my book? So when I was getting, my publisher was getting ready to launch Reclaiming the Wild Soul, I went on a search and I saw Claire. She was then Claire Dakin. And her name, and she had given this lovely blurb for the book. So I wrote to her, and actually Ed Veach, who was then very active, and many listeners will know Ed Veach, said, well, send us the manuscript. So I did, and Ed Veach kind of fell in love with it. And Claire gave a gorgeous blurb. And then this idea was seeded, maybe I could teach a course based on my book, Reclaiming the Wild Soul. So at that point, I was like, okay, who really are TreeSisters? What are they about?
Yeah.
It was this absolute, for me, magical moments, because I realized it was one of the few organizations that I knew of that shared what to me is a deep passion, that outer action and inner work have to happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
That we have to do this work of rewilding ourselves if we are going to rewild the world. That we can't just that when we think about our oneness with nature, if we absolutely get in the depth of our bones that what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves because we are one with the earth, then we have to begin to look at these things not as dual things, but as one thing that we have to do. We have to heal here to heal here, and we have to heal here to heal here. That it's a reciprocal looped thing.
Absolutely.
And so then I'm like so excited. I go, empowering women.
I know the feeling.
Really, hot flash immediately. If I wasn't past that.
Right. It brought it right back.
Yeah, it brought it right back. Exactly. So that was when I started to work quite closely with Claire to develop this, because I knew I wanted to do something different with the course while I was still going to work with the earth archetypes that I do write about in Reclaiming the Wild Soul. I wanted to make this a journey that particularly addressed women and their issues.
Yeah.
So she and I worked together on it, and it was a real privilege, and it was fun, and we became dear friends through the process, and I just sort of came to be really a part of the organization in a way that has just been so deeply meaningful to me in no small part, as everyone listening here knows, because you get to meet other spectacular women who share the same pains, the same passions that you do, and you don't feel crazy anymore. You know?
Absolutely. No more isolation.
No more isolation. So
yeah, I resonate with what you're saying so much. It was, basically the same for me. And I think it may have even been very close to the same time when I was coming in that you started your course and all of that started happening, but the resonance was right there in that moment. Like, we're caring about what's going on inside. We have to heal inside, and we have to heal the earth simultaneously. It's, it's the feminine. It's, I felt that and didn't really know anyone else who was putting those together, like you said.
Right.
And when I found them, and then found that there was also a niche for art and creativity, the same with the VG, and I had a conversation, and that's where it started for me too. And I was like, really? like all three of these things do make sense, and there is a reason that I'm on this path. And so, that's what it is for me too. It's very, destination. It's a definite destination. And your work has been real integral with TreeSisters as well. For me particularly, like I said, because you had just sort of started with this offering the course, and so when I started coming in, it was offered and it was there, and then you and I got to know each other, and I came and visited and did the water blessing and was honored to be part of that, and Claire came there, and and just all of these things fell into place. And so you are a huge part of it, like you say, for me too, and I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way about you and your work and being a wild soul woman, beyond the facilitators. Just a lot of people have taken your course. Let's see, I've got some questions written down. Okay, let's start talking about the landscapes and the archetypes, and where did that idea come from?
Yeah, well, I've always loved language. I've always, like you said, little girl writing my little book. So I've always been deeply moved by language and its ability to shift consciousness. So I earned my living for many, many years as a copywriter and a brander. And so that was kind of, it's how I made my way in the world. You know, many of us, we do the money making work, and I did that. But in 2001, you know, when the towers came down, I sort of had an epiphany. I was already deeply into two parts of my life. One was sobriety, which has been a huge part of my journey, but also my connection to nature. I just was wanting to spend more and more time outdoors. And so I decided I had to change things up, but I didn't know what to do. And then onto my radar came this thing called poetry therapy. And it was like, oh my God, you know, having loved poetry all my life, having loved words, metaphor, particularly, I suffer. I tell people from metaphoria. There is no metaphor that doesn't excite me, you know. So as I was beginning to study then as a poetry therapist, I became trained. I fell in love with the nature poets, and the nature poets had their eye on nature out here, but they always brought us into nature inside. So this dance between the wild without and the wild within began to really intrigue me.
Yeah.
And this began to develop into this program of working with landscape, which then became this sort of arc of this journey from the deserts and the forests and the oceans and rivers and the mountains and the grasslands as a sort of truly Shiro's journey into a deep sense of belonging in our bodies, in this earth, in all kinds of deep ways. And so through my training, I just began to focus right from the get-go, and I was lucky enough to be mentored by a woman who said, go for it. She said, you're clearly in love with this. Just allow yourself to explore it. So I did.
Wonderful.
So I was giving workshops based around the earth archetypes in about 2002, 2003 and onwards.
Wow.
And then it just deepened and deepened and deepened. And I began to think more and more about archetype and how incredibly important it is, because archetypes essentially hold the patterns and potential for us as human beings.
Right.
So when we awaken to an earth archetype, literally we can change. When that archetype becomes aroused within us, our imaginations, our psyches, our desire to be or do certain things changes, and it changes quickly. So if you don't want to muck about,
Yeah, get down to it.
Don't stir an archetype.
Poke an archetype. Yeah.
And I thought, if we keep talking about we want to become more earth conscious, and there are so many ways to do that, and people are doing amazing work now in the realm of eco-psychology and forest bathing and nature connection and everything like that. And all of that is supremely important. And I think more and more what I want us to do as humans is begin to reweave the mythic story of our lives into the story of the earth, so that it becomes this one story. And when people write, I mean, you've heard it on the courses, you've seen it, and you've felt it in your own writing. When you suddenly begin to speak as desert or forest, I mean, when you embody that archetype, it's extraordinary what happens.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary.
I love the reweaving that you talk about, reweaving us back together, because it does feel like a memory. Like, when we did the different activities and what I do now when I'm facilitating, and we just tap in, like write a poem or paint a painting or whatever that we're doing, and speak from, the woman of the forest, you know, the woman of the rivers and the oceans, you know, all of a sudden you're just like, oh yeah. And it just falls right out, like as if,
I know,
you know, we'd always been there. And so the reweaving I love, because it is something that is a memory. It is something I believe fully that we knew and we were connected to in every way. And we held it as a sacred knowing between us and shared it. And along the way it was, you know, lost, and but it can't stay lost. And so, you know, that energy is coming back through this, and it feels that primal to me. It feels like, this is it, you know, it really does. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautifully said. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what's your favorite landscape? Well, let's just, if we could just do a quick description of all of them first, and then we'll, you know, and then you can tell us which one is your favorite, or which one is your favorite right now. You know.
Well, that's probably the better question. Actually, that's really true. It's because they shift and they change. So the desert, if you imagine, you know, maybe people would like to shut their eyes for a little bit. Shall I? Yeah, would that be a good idea?
That would be a great idea.
One of the things about archetypes is that they live on the collective level, but you also have a very personal relationship with them. So if you just think, you know, shut your eyes, relax, and imagine for a moment that you're in the desert, and you sense all around you the vastness and the spaciousness, you know, the immensity of the sky, a certain barrenness. You know, this is not a highly vegetated landscape. So just feel how much that can feel like a certain kind of emptiness. And maybe in this emptiness, there's this capacity to step back a little bit from your life and really observe it. And to feel into sort of the bare bones of your being. And just take a few deep desert breaths. And then imagine, miraculously, as imagination takes us into miraculous shifts, you're awakening into a forest landscape. Much darker, much denser, a thick, thick canopy above you. A sort of gloaming light, a twilight light. And there's a sense here of mystery, of not knowing, not being able to see very far. With all the trees around you, you can only really feel the pulsing presence of the moment. And just allow that, a sort of sense of enwombment held in this dark forest space. And just feel where you embrace that inside of you. And taking a few deep breaths. Begin to feel yourself flow and trickle and stream yourself into the oceans and rivers. Yeah, just allow that gentle ebb and flow to fill you. And here in this watery scape, feel deeply into the flow of your longings. You know, what is it that you really want? The deepest wellspring of your desire, and just allow that to flow through you unimpeded, undammed. That wild wanting, you know, perhaps permission to ride the river of your wild wanting. And now in the distance, a mountain that gets closer and closer and feels more and more immense and high and tall, a sky toucher. And as you look at this mountain, you begin to feel the grandeur and granite in your own being, and perhaps your spine strengthens. And you know deep inside that any challenge that you have, you're up to it. You know, you too carry mountain strength. You're a woman of rock and stone. And you descend the mountain until your feet touch the soft green grasses of the valleys, and you enter the grasslands, this place of homecoming where you're welcomed by community, a sense of belonging, where truly you come to know that the body of the earth is your body. And you feel deeply your love for the earth and for your community and for your family. And you feel also and deeply the love that the earth has for you, how she is holding you and supporting you in every breath and every step you take. And you are held in the great lap of the mother, and she will not let you go because you belong here. And very gently feeling that deep love still stirring within you. Whenever you're ready, open your eyes.
Oh, Mary. Thank you. It brought me all the way back to the beautiful redwoods in Ben Lomond.
Oh.
The beautiful retreat with you, and just being privy to the taste that we just had over the whole retreat, and you know, the transformation that it has, just to take the time to really feel each and every landscape. I would love to hear everyone who's listening to this and who joins this. I'd love to hear some feedback. I'm sure Mary would too. And
I would.
just to hear what it feels like for you, and everyone's unique, you know, and it's all means something special to all of us, whatever is going on. I started to tear up in the grasslands this time. I feel like I may be in the grasslands, and
It's funny because, you know, you asked me, you know, like what in the moment is the one, and as I was reflecting, you know, I feel that this is like a writer's journey too. It's a journey, right? It's a journey. Yeah. And so I feel, what I want to say is I'm in all of them. So what I feel right now is I'm trying to allow my quirkiness with desert quirkiness. You know, things are so strange in the desert. Such strange and wondrous creatures, and prickly and blah.
Oh, I love it.
And you know, I just want that permission in my writing A Wild Soul Woman to just be utterly and quirkily myself. And in the forest, I want to not rush this, because I've had a lot of things that have sort of happened that have sort of slowed down my process of writing, and part of me just wants to ruthlessly chase through that forest on that straight path and have the damn thing done.
Write the
The
damn book.
forest says, oh baby, sit and breathe and explore, and it's okay. You're living into the mystery.
Yeah.
And then with the longing, it's like, you know, what is it? What does this book really, really long to be? What does it really, really, really long to be? And then in the mountain is structure, challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Sit down, set your time, do the work, do the, you know, life is, sometimes it is also doing this, and that's okay.
And that's
It's
okay.
absolutely okay. That is part of the journey.
Yeah. Finding the balance.
Right. And then the grasslands was, I imagined, as I was saying it to you, I was imagining this book coming down the mountain to be
Ooh.
you know? So I thought, now that's pretty juicy.
Wow.
So I think I'm all over the place.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
you're writing the book, so
yeah,
I think you have to be all over the place,
right,
you know, to be able to fulfill the mission that you're on. And so
right.
so is this a bad question, but how far do you have to go with?
It's a very terrible question. Next question.
back to the quirky forest. I was being one of those little rascals in the forest. No, I know that it's all in due time, and we're just, you know, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. We've been, you know, talking about it a little bit here and there throughout the training that it was coming, and yeah, I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it, Mary. Yeah. So yeah, we'll bring you back when you get
Thank
it.
you. Good incentive, Kathleen. Good incentive.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, it's already there, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
I called it that name instead of reclaiming the wild soul. It
Yeah.
was the Wild Soul Women. So that book, it's already there, coming down the mountain.
Right.
Coming down the mountain. So no, I'm sure everybody's looking forward to it, but you know, good things take time. And you know, I love how the landscapes, you know, can help us to balance. And you know, I learned so much. You know, I learned as a facilitator, but I learned as a, you know, personally for me along the whole journey of what you crafted to train us was something that actually worked on us, as well as, you know, of course it would have to, but it was nothing I've ever gone through before. It was something that really, really got to the nature of who I am that I had forgotten and didn't appreciate, you know, like, you know, like when I was laughing when you were saying we have to do this sometimes, you know, and I get caught in between this and like this, you know, and I don't know if I'm up or down sometimes. And it's really nice to know, you know, like, okay, it's all right, you know, this is where I am right now, and that'll move into the next landscape. And sometimes two or three can play off in a day, I suppose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know, what else would you like to say? I mean, we're talking, this is coming out of this is coming into the well of creativity and wisdom, Mary, and everything that you're about fits right in there, like, you know, perfectly. But if you were going to, you know, speak to any of the Tree Sisters who are maybe beginning a book or have an idea, you know, that they want to birth, and it doesn't have to be a book, because it can be anything. It can be dinner,
Right.
you know, it can be a new way of eating, which is something that I need to concentrate on. But, you know, just any idea, any of that imaginative energy that you were talking about, that from that 6-year-old, what would be your advice, or, you know, just a tip or whatever you'd like to share about that?
Well, maybe this might be a time, because the piece you asked me to bring something to read. Maybe this would
Okay.
be the perfect answer, because it kind of speaks to it. It kind of speaks to a relationship with creativity that we're not necessarily used to having.
Okay. Let me bring up the cover of your book so everybody can see it. the book that's already out, just to make that clear, Reclaiming the Wild Soul. And it's just a beautiful book too, Mary. I always wanted to tell you, I just love the cover draws you in, you know, and you just see all the different landscapes, and they're and they each one of them kind of speaks to you already before you even open the book.
Thank you.
So I'm going to switch back to your beautiful face, though, while you're reading, and take it away.
So this is from the chapter in the forest called Mystery. You enter the forest at the darkest point where there is no path. That's Joseph Campbell. It was after 10 o'clock at night, and I was returning to my cabin nestled amid the redwood trees at a retreat center in the hills above Santa Cruz. I'd been teaching a class on writing called The Root Voice, and I was ready for sleep. The air was warm, the stars brilliant, and with everyone in bed, the night tranquil. I turned away from my cabin and walked deeper into the woods. Above me, the wind in the treetops filled the sky with the ocean's roar. Beneath my feet, the earth spun black as the heavens, so that the trees seemed to grow out of the sky and the ground simultaneously. Blackness wrapped around me, and the damp earth, with its mix of sharp pine and dank scent. I heard the snap of branches, the crackle of dry pine needles, imagined eyes lighting up the forest like starlight. An owl screeched, beak and claw tearing into the night. Everything soft in me trembled. I could have headed back to the safety of my cabin there and then, but like a child enthralled by a scary fairy tale, I was pulled towards the enchanted world of the dark forest. I was 5 years old again, listening to my father weave yarns of witches, dark woods, and decaying castles. I sought out the scary places back then in Grimm's fairy tales, read late at night by flashlight, inviting ghosts, goblins, and giants to follow me into my dreams. And I sought the scary places again that night as the moonless forest enfolded me. The forest is the darkest of the landscapes. Trees press in, dense foliage blocks the compass sun from view. No longer able to depend on our sense of sight, our other senses become more acute. Hackles raised, instincts awakened. We move out of the clear-cut life into uncharted places. If we enter without a road or map, we make a path through the forest that is entirely our own. I'm going to skip a little bit. If you've ever dared to brave the depths of your creativity, this is the message for you. You know the power of darkness. Know the world is a mystical and mercurial place. In the forest, you glimpse a flash of feathers in the boughs, a paw print in the dirt, and you are graced. But you are also stalked. Something out there is seeking you too. It will only reveal itself if the moment is right.
Wow. That, I want to print that passage in this post. You know, I've read it, but when you just read it to me, that especially that part about, for me anyway, the part about that something out there is stalking me. That got me. It does. I'm being stalked too, and
right.
It's this, you know, these parallel universes all working together within and around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that creativity is incredibly wild, and that we can't just chase after it. You know, try chasing a deer in the forest. You're not going to get very far. But if you can feel that creature there and really that awareness, it's very likely that she will come to you. You will have that complete confrontation. And creativity is like that. Don't chase after it.
No.
Open, become aware, sensitive, deep listening, and then feel what's wanting to find you.
Yeah, beautifully said. absolutely stunning. It is exactly what I feel when I'm painting, and and when I'm teaching, and when I'm holding that space just to allow it to come in. It's just it's so sacred, just that moment of just letting down my urgency to figure out what it must be. I love it.
Oh, I never suffer from that, Kathleen.
Yeah. we all do, right? And it's so tricky to just be like, oh, like stop thinking for like just listening is the key. Mary, I am so honored to have you here today, and my friend, my fellow tree sister, and you're just an amazing soul who's bringing something very deep and very nourishing to the world, and particularly to Tree Sisters right now. So we're very, very lucky for that.
And listen, my dear friend, the same to you, with all the beauty and wisdom and earth wisdom that you bring. I thank you. And creativity, glorious creativity.
Woo!
Hard to say goodbye, but